Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a mountain of research and distill it into those crucial insights you need to be truly well-informed.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're tackling a question that cuts really to the core of what it means to learn, what really drives our educational journey. Is it simply intelligence or sheer willpower, or could there be like an invisible force deeply tied to how we feel that shapes our entire path?
It's a profound question, and it's one that Professor Reinhard Pekrun, a leading expert in educational psychology, has dedicated his career to answering. His groundbreaking work has fundamentally changed how we understand academic emotions, showing us they're far more than just side effects. They're central.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive, it's sort of twofold. First, we're going to clearly explain the main themes and, well, the fascinating findings from Pekrun's extensive research, particularly his incredibly influential control value theory of achievement emotions. This theory offers a powerful lens, really, through which to view our inner world as learners.
Right, it gives us a framework.
And second, and this is where it gets incredibly practical, we'll translate these complex academic insights into actionable, real-world advice. Whether you're a teacher, a student, or simply someone passionate about fostering effective learning, you'll walk away with research-backed steps you can truly implement. Steps to cultivate a more rewarding educational experience for yourself or, for others.
Exactly. And our journey today is guided by a rich stack of peer-reviewed articles and extensive studies, many co-authored or significantly influenced by Pekrun himself. We've explored everything from the intricate dynamics of emotions in, say, mathematics classrooms.
Yeah, math seems to come up a lot in this research.
It does, and also the surprising neurological underpinnings of boredom and even confusion. It's a deep dive into the very heart of how we learn, guided by those who peer deepest into the data, offering you, the listener, a shortcut to understanding this vital area of psychology.
Okay, fantastic. So let's dive into the core of Pekrun's work then, starting with perhaps his most fundamental insight, the profound importance of emotions. We often think of education as purely cognitive, facts, figures, logic, memory.
The head stuff.
Exactly, the head stuff. But Pekrun and his colleagues make a compelling argument. Emotions are far from just a side effect of learning. They're the invisible engine, maybe the fundamental force driving our entire educational journey. This fundamentally shifts how we approach teaching and learning, doesn't it?
It really does. That's precisely it. They highlight at least three core reasons why emotions are so crucial. First, and perhaps most broadly, emotions are intrinsically important just for their own sake. They're integral components of an individual's subjective well-being and psychological health.
Right, just feeling good matters.
It does. As prominent researchers have highlighted, how students feel impacts their overall mental state. So when we focus on emotions in education, we're not just aiming for better grades, we're actively contributing to a student's holistic well-being and mental health. It means creating learning environments where students genuinely feel good about themselves and their progress.
That makes incredible sense. It's not just about what you know, but how you feel about knowing it and the process of acquiring that knowledge. And this leads directly to the second reason, which really brings our engine metaphor to life. Emotions directly impact the quality of learning and achievement. High-quality learning, as we all know, is demanding. It requires significant time, sustained focus, and considerable effort. Learners are far more inclined to invest this effort to push through challenges if the learning activities are effectively rewarding, that is, if they're enjoyable, interesting, and engaging.
Rather than anxiety-laden or, even worse, boredom-inducing.
Exactly. If it feels like a slog, who wants to do it?
And this isn't just a subjective feeling, like you said. The connection is deeply rooted in our biology. Positive emotions, for instance, can actually elevate dopamine levels in the brain. What's fascinating is that increased dopamine directly influences long-term memory formation.
Wow. Okay.
There's a concrete neurological link between feeling good about learning and actually remembering what you've learned. Think about it. A truly exciting lecture, or the thrill of finally understanding a complex concept, isn't just pleasant. It's literally helping your brain lay down stronger memories.
That's a powerful revelation, seriously. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Emotions actively steer our attentional processes and how we allocate our precious cognitive resources.
Yeah, where your brain power goes.
Right. Imagine two scenarios. Approaching a new topic with excitement and curiosity versus dreading it because it feels overwhelming. Your focus, your ability to absorb and process information will be entirely different.
Completely. Emotions also play a critical role in inducing and sustaining genuine student interest in the learning material. Interest isn't just something you start with. It's shaped, cultivated, and sustained by the emotional experience of learning itself. If you enjoy the process, you're far more likely to stick with it.
It feeds itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Furthermore, emotions can trigger distinct modes of information processing and problem solving. Consider how a joyful or curious mood might promote more creative and flexible thinking compared to a state of anxiety or stress, which often narrows our focus, makes us tunnel-visioned.
Right, like fight or flight for the brain.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Emotions also play a pivotal role in enabling or impeding students' self-regulation of learning and performance. A student struggling with overwhelming negative emotions, perhaps deep anxiety about an exam or frustration with a difficult concept, might find it much harder to manage their own learning process. Even if they possess the necessary cognitive tools and intelligence, their emotional state can effectively hijack their ability to self-regulate.
That's huge. And for the third big reason why emotions matter, they predict future educational and even career choices. This one genuinely surprised me when I was reading through the material.
It's quite striking, isn't it?
It really is. While traditional cognitive competencies like intelligence or prior grades are good at predicting success once someone is already enrolled in a course or program.
Like predicting your GPA if you get into college.
Exactly. Research consistently shows that emotional variables are actually better predictors of whether a student will even choose to enroll in a particular course or even pursue a career in a given domain.
That's fascinating.
If students are emotionally drawn to the content of a domain, if they feel enjoyment, curiosity, or a sense of accomplishment, they become keen to learn more. They're far more likely to commit to that path long term, driven by that intrinsic pull rather than just, external pressures or what they think they should do.
So it's not just about what you're capable of doing, but what you're passionate about doing, what pulls you in. This brings us directly to Pekrun's foundational framework, his powerful engine for understanding these connections. The control value theory.
Okay, the control value theory.
Yes, this is the central explanatory model developed over years of extensive research. It posits that a student's emotional experiences in academic contexts are directly influenced by their appraisals of two core elements, control and value. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're the internal lenses through which we view our learning journey. How we size up the situation, basically.
So let's really break down these two critical appraisals. First, we have control appraisals. What exactly does that mean?
Okay, control appraisals. This is essentially a student's judgment about their personal competence, their ability to influence outcomes.
Right, like, can I handle this?
Exactly. It's about their expectations for success or failure in a given task, and crucially, their causal attributions for past achievements or setbacks. Think of it as that internal monologue asking, can I do this? Will I succeed? And importantly, why did I succeed or fail in the past? Was it me? Was it luck? Was it the teacher?
Ah, okay, so it's that deeply personal assessment of one's own capability and agency.
Precisely. Then you have value appraisals, which have two distinct but related components. The first are action values, which refer to the perceived importance or intrinsic reward of the learning activity itself.
The process.
The process, yes. For example, I find working with numbers engaging, or I genuinely enjoy brainstorming solutions to this problem. This speaks to the enjoyment of the process of learning, the satisfaction derived from the activity right here, right now.
Okay, and the second part of value appraisals.
That's achievement outcome values. This is the subjective importance a student places on attaining a successful outcome, or conversely, avoiding failure.
So the result.
The result, the end game. An example here would be, it is absolutely crucial for me to pass this exam, or getting into that university program means everything to me. This affects the emotions tied to the result, the grades, the recognition, the progression. It's the destination, not just the journey, although both matter.
Right. So the brilliance of Pekrun's theory lies in how these two appraisals, control and value, interact to predict specific emotions. Can you give some examples?
Absolutely. Let's take enjoyment, for instance, that incredibly positive and motivating feeling. This emotion, whether it's about the activity or the outcome, typically arises when a student has high control appraisals,
I can do this.
right, combined with high subjective activity values.
And I find this interesting.
Exactly, and high outcome values.
And doing well matters to me.
Yes. So picture a student thinking, I know I can totally do this, I find it genuinely interesting, and it really matters to me to do well. That powerful combination sparks authentic enjoyment and engagement.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now, what about the flip side, like anxiety?
Okay, anxiety. Often outcome related. This emotion is typically born from low control appraisals.
I'm not sure I can do this.
coupled with high achievement outcome values.
But I have to succeed.
Exactly. It's that classic feeling of, I must get a good grade, but deep down, I'm just not sure I can. That's the anxiety kicking in, the fear of not meeting a high-stakes expectation, despite feeling a lack of personal agency over the outcome. It's a debilitating state for learning.
Yeah, you can feel that knot in your stomach just thinking about it. What about anger?
Anger, also usually outcome-related, often results from low internal control appraisals, meaning attributing failure to external factors.
Blaming someone else?
Right, blaming the teacher, the unfair test, the noisy classroom paired with high achievement outcome values. So the student thinks, I failed, but it wasn't my fault, it was the system, and this grade was so important to me. This external blame and sense of injustice can fuel anger, which, while activating, can be highly unproductive for learning. It directs energy outwards, not towards improvement.
Okay. And then there's boredom. You mentioned this is particularly fascinating and often misunderstood. How does that fit into the control value framework?
Boredom is primarily action-related, tied to the task itself, and it often arises from a pattern of both low control and low action values.
So I can't do this and I don't care anyway.
That's one possibility, yes. Or equally, it could be a high control situation where the value is missing because it's just too easy. This is ridiculously easy and I'm not engaged at all because it offers no challenge or meaning.
So boredom isn't just about difficulty.
Not at all. It really highlights that boredom isn't simply about difficulty. It's about the perceived value and challenge of the task itself, or the lack thereof. It's about the fit between you and the task.
Got it. Okay. With Pekrun's foundational theory now firmly in mind, let's zoom in on the specific emotions that populate our learning experiences. We'll unpack enjoyment, anxiety, anger, and even the surprising nuances of boredom and confusion, delving deeper into what they are and how they manifest.
Sounds good. This is part 2, the emotional landscape of learning, specific feelings and their dynamics.
Perfect. Let's start with enjoyment, the fuel for engagement and growth. This is a positive, activating emotion. Research measures it reliably with statements like, I enjoy my math class. Simple enough.
Right, it's fairly straightforward to ask about.
What's particularly compelling is its link to both performance and cognitive ability. Enjoyment is consistently more prominent in students with high abstract reasoning ability, or ARA.
Often what we think of as raw intellectual horsepower, yeah.
And those who achieve in the top and middle performance levels. Imagine the satisfaction of a challenging problem that clicks into place.
Definitely. In fact, studies show students in the top third of test performance even reported the highest levels of retrospective enjoyment after a math test.
So after the fact, they looked back and said, yeah, I actually enjoyed that.
Kind of. It's almost as if the joy of mastery confirms their abilities and reinforces that positive feeling.
Interesting. And you mentioned earlier there's a layered structure to enjoyment.
Yes, what's truly fascinating here is the hierarchical structure of enjoyment itself. It exists at different levels, almost like concentric circles. You can have very specific enjoyment, L1 they call it, like finding joy in using a particular study method. I enjoy using different strategies.
Yeah.
Or solving a specific type of problem.
Okay, very specific.
Then it can broaden to L2, enjoyment of learning in general, or L3, enjoyment of a specific subject like mathematics, or even enjoyment of school overall.
It goes even broader.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
L4 could be enjoyment of life. But critically, within the academic domain, L1, L2, L3, researchers found significant top-down effects. This means that a more general enjoyment of school can positively influence a student's enjoyment of specific learning activities or strategies. It's like a positive ripple effect through their entire academic experience.
That's incredibly powerful. It's like a positive feedback loop where a general sense of contentment with school feeds into more specific moments of enjoyment during learning.
Exactly. And high levels of enjoyment are robustly linked to adaptive learning styles. This isn't just a happy feeling. It translates into tangible behaviors. It includes flexible approaches to learning, strong self-regulated learning behaviors, where students take ownership of their learning process.
Managing the time, setting goals.
Yes, all of that. And even specific positive actions, like learning from mistakes and frequently using effective study tools such as flashcards or concept maps. The connection between self-regulated learning and learning-related enjoyment is notably strong, with correlations around 0.43 to 0.47 in some studies. It underscores that enjoyment isn't just a feeling, it's a driver of truly effective, impactful learning.
It fuels the engine. Okay, now let's turn to anxiety and anger. You call them the activating adversaries. Why activating?
Well, unlike boredom or hopelessness, which are deactivating, anxiety and anger often spur action, but it's usually in a distressing rather than productive way. Anxiety is a negative, activating emotion, often assessed with statements like, when taking the math test, I worry I will get a bad grade.
That worry definitely feels activating, but not in a good way.
Right. Its prevalence is most pronounced in students with lower abstract reasoning ability, and it's primarily observed among students in the middle to bottom performance tiers. Interestingly, its intensity tends to decrease as students move from before a test to during and after it, perhaps as the immediate pressure dissipates or they realize it's not as bad as they feared.
Okay. And there's a consistent finding regarding gender differences in math anxiety that's worth highlighting again.
Yes, multiple studies, including a major meta-analysis going back decades, consistently show that girls tend to report higher levels of mathematics anxiety than boys. Cohen's D was around 0.15 in one big study, and newer research confirms this trend. It's a well-documented pattern.
Okay. And anger. Also activating.
Yes, also a negative activating emotion, and like anxiety, it's more frequently experienced by students in the middle to bottom performance levels, perhaps feeling unfairly judged or frustrated by difficulty.
And what shapes these emotions in the classroom? What are the triggers?
Well, research points to a couple of key factors. Both anxiety and anger are significantly predicted by students' perceptions of teacher punishment behaviors.
Like being called out for mistakes or harsh grading.
Exactly. And also, a high degree of perceived competition among classmates. Imagine a classroom where the teacher frequently penalizes mistakes, or where students feel constantly pitted against each other for grades. These environments can become hotbeds for these negative activating emotions, profoundly impacting how students feel about their learning and about themselves.
That makes sense. Okay, shifting gears now. Let's talk about boredom, often a neglected emotion, but one you said has surprising nuance and a powerful impact on engagement.
Absolutely. It's generally classified as a negative, deactivating emotion. Think of it as that mental slump, that feeling of, I am bored in this class, which can lead to disengagement, mind wandering, and a lack of effort.
We've all been there.
We have. But what's truly fascinating here is the ability-boredom paradox. You might think boredom is solely for struggling students, but research actually finds it to be highest among students in the intermediate abstract reasoning ability group.
Wait, the middle group, not the top or bottom.
Yes, the middle group. Which means boredom isn't one size fits all. It spans across the entire performance spectrum. High-performing students may experience boredom due to a lack of challenge. The material is too easy, they've mastered it too quickly, they're just waiting.
Okay, this is boring because it's too simple.
Right. Conversely, low-performing students might feel bored because the material is overly taxing or overwhelming, leading to a sense of, I can't do this, so why bother trying? It feels hopeless, so they check out.
This is boring because I'm lost.
Exactly. This highlights that the root cause of boredom can be vastly different depending on the learner and the situation.
That's a huge insight for teachers trying to manage a diverse classroom. And researchers have actually identified different types of boredom.
Yes, they've developed a fascinating taxonomy of 5 distinct boredom types based on combinations of how negative it feels its valence and how activated the individual feels their arousal. It's much more complex than just lack of interest.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, there's indifferent boredom. Low negative feeling, low arousal. This is a state of calm disengagement, almost like peacefully zoning out, not terribly unpleasant, just blah.
Okay, just drifting.
Then calibrating boredom. Moderate negative feeling, moderate arousal. Here you're feeling a bit restless, seeking engagement but not yet distressed. You're trying to figure out if you should re-engage or find something else.
Trying to find a way back in.
Then searching boredom. Moderate negative feeling but high arousal. Now you're actively, perhaps restlessly, searching for engagement. Maybe fiddling with your pen, looking around the room, thinking about anything but the task.
Okay, getting agitated.
Fourth is reactant boredom. High negative feeling, high arousal. Now you're feeling frustrated, irritated, potentially disruptive. This is the kind of boredom that makes you want to challenge the teacher, complain, or escape the situation. You feel trapped.
Right, actively resisting the boredom.
And finally, there's apathetic boredom. Very high negative feeling, but low arousal. This represents profound disengagement, a feeling of giving up. The student just doesn't care anymore. They feel helpless and withdrawn. It's a really concerning state.
Wow, that's a much richer picture than I imagined. Do we know how common these are?
Well, one study found that apathetic boredom was notably more common in high school students, around 36%, compared to university students, about 10%, which suggests it might be a cumulative effect over years of disengagement, or maybe just reflects different pressures. Overall, achievement situation school studying are a frequent context for boredom, accounting for a significant majority, maybe 55–75% of reported boredom experiences, depending on the type. It's a pervasive, yet often overlooked, challenge in education.
Definitely something to pay more attention to. Okay, let's quickly round out the specific emotions with pride, hopelessness, and shame. These seem more tied to outcomes.
Yes, they often are. Pride is a positive emotion reflecting satisfaction, reliably measured by items like, I am proud of my contributions to my math class. Interestingly, studies consistently show that boys tend to report significantly more pride in mathematics than girls, which likely ties back to those competence beliefs we discussed.
Right, and
The
hopelessness.
distinctly negative emotion, assessed with statements like, during the math test, I feel hopeless. And again, mirroring the anxiety findings, girls generally report higher levels of hopelessness in math than boys.
And shame.
Shame is another negative emotion linked to feelings of inadequacy, measured by, I am ashamed that I cannot answer my math teacher's questions well. While girls reported slightly more shame in some studies, the difference wasn't always considered substantial. These emotions, pride, hopelessness, shame, are powerful indicators of how students perceive their success and failures, and critically, how they internalize those outcomes, whether they feel good about themselves or diminished by the experience.
Okay. Now, for what might be the most surprising and perhaps counterintuitive finding in this entire emotional landscape, the surprising power of confusion. You mentioned this earlier.
Yes, it's really fascinating research. Traditionally, we view confusion as negative, right? A sign of failure, something to be avoided.
Yeah, usually you want clarity, not confusion.
But the research actually highlights confusion as potentially highly beneficial for learning if, and this is a big if, it is appropriately induced, regulated, and ultimately resolved. This is a key insight that completely reframes how we should view moments of perplexity.
So confusion isn't always bad. How does it work?
Well, what's truly fascinating here is that confusion originates from what's called cognitive disequilibrium. Think of it as your brain encountering a glitch in its operating system. Something doesn't compute. It's triggered by contradictions, conflicts, anomalies, or even seemingly erroneous information that challenges your existing knowledge structures, your schemas.
Like when something just doesn't make sense based on what you thought you knew?
Exactly. As one prominent theory suggests, when information doesn't fit neatly into what you already know, it interrupts your automatic thought process and prompts your brain to stop, reevaluate, and seek resolution. It's like a metal itch that needs scratching.
Okay, so it flags a problem. What's the impact of that flag?
The impact of this itch is profound. Confusion acts as a catalyst for deeper information processing. It prompts learners to engage more thoroughly with the material to resolve that cognitive conflict. When you're confused, you don't just skim. You dig in, you question, you seek answers, you think harder.
You have to work to make sense of it.
Precisely. Studies confirm a causal link between intentionally induced confusion, say, by presenting contradictory information in learning scenarios, and enhanced learning outcomes. This is particularly true for transfer tasks, where knowledge needs to be applied to new, unfamiliar situations. It means that productive confusion isn't just a byproduct of learning. It's an active ingredient in making that learning stick and become truly transferable.
So a little bit of well-managed confusion can actually lead to deeper learning.
Yes, if it's resolved. If it just leads to frustration and giving up, then no. But if it sparks that deeper processing and gets resolved, it's very powerful. Interestingly, measuring confusion effectively isn't always straightforward. Objective measures, like seeing if students hesitate or make errors on questions right after encountering contradictory information, prove more reliable indicators of confusion than student self-reports.
Why is that? People don't want to admit they're confused.
That could be part of it. Social pressures, wanting to appear competent, or maybe just a lack of precise emotional self-awareness in the moment. Am I confused or just frustrated? Because the huge point for educators. Don't just ask if students are confused. Look for behavioral or performance indicators that reveal it might be happening. Observe them.
That's an incredible insight for anyone involved in teaching or learning design. Okay, this has been fascinating. Let's transition into part 3. Decoding the drivers. What shapes our learning emotions? We'll start by looking inward at the internal drivers, our beliefs, our inherent abilities, and our prior experiences. These are the internal mechanisms that filter and shape our emotional responses to learning.
Right, the stuff inside our heads. First up are competence beliefs, which are really the foundation of confidence and its far-reaching impact. Students' beliefs about their own competence are paramount. When students believe they are capable, it directly fosters positive emotions like enjoyment and pride. Seems obvious, but it's critical.
And the reverse.
Conversely, Low beliefs about one's abilities strongly contribute to negative ones, such as anxiety, hopelessness, and shame. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways. If you think you'll fail, you'll feel anxious, which might actually make you perform worse.
And you mentioned the gender disparity here, particularly in math.
Yes, what's concerning is the consistent pattern often observed in mathematics. Girls, for instance, reliably report lower competence beliefs in mathematics compared to boys, even when performance levels are similar sometimes. This maladaptive pattern of beliefs, intertwined with negative emotional experiences like higher anxiety, can be observed surprisingly early, often by age 11. This highlights the importance of fostering positive competence beliefs right from the start, for everyone.
That's a critical early indicator showing the long-term impact of these foundational beliefs. Okay, next we have value beliefs. What we care about and why it matters. You break this down earlier too.
Yes, these encompass two key aspects. First, how much a student intrinsically values the subject itself, what Pekrun calls domain value.
Like, I just find history fascinating.
Exactly. Think of it as someone saying, mathematics is my favorite subject, expressing a genuine interest in the field itself. Second, there's achievement value, which is how important students perceive achieving positive outcomes in that subject.
Getting an A in this class is crucial for my scholarship.
Precisely. Like, it's very important for me to get good grades in mathematics. These two types of value are connected, they often go together, but they are distinct. Research shows they're moderately correlated, maybe around R equal 0.34. You can value the subject, but not the grades, or vice versa, though usually there's some link.
Okay. And how do these different value beliefs connect to specific emotions?
Well, they have specific, predictable emotional connections. A high domain value, that genuine interest in the subject, is strongly associated with enjoyment and pride. It makes sense. If you love what you're doing, you'll feel good about it.
Makes learning feel less like work.
Exactly. Conversely, low domain values clearly contribute to anxiety and hopelessness. If you don't care about the subject, if it feels meaningless, it's easy to feel overwhelmed or just give up when it gets tough.
Right. And the achievement value part, the importance of the outcome.
High achievement value, particularly when combined with low perceived control, that's the killer combo we mentioned, for anxiety fuels anxiety, hopelessness, and shame. This is the student who desperately wants to pass but fears they can't. The pressure is immense. For pride, both domain and achievement value play a role, but studies suggest that the intrinsic enjoyment of the domain itself is actually a stronger predictor of pride than just wanting a good grade. Feeling competent and interested feels better than just succeeding because you had to.
That's interesting. And again, the gender difference here.
And echoing our previous point on competence beliefs, boys generally report higher domain and achievement values in mathematics than girls in many studies.
Yeah.
Part of that same pattern.
So these internal beliefs, competence, and value really set the emotional stage for learning. What about prior achievement? How does our history of success or failure factor into this complex emotional equation? Does getting good grades just make you feel better?
Well, yes and no. A student's prior academic performance in a subject shows a positive correlation with enjoyment and pride, and a negative correlation with anxiety, hopelessness, and shame. That seems intuitive. If you've done well before, you generally feel better about the subject moving forward.
Okay, so past success breeds positive feelings.
Yes, but, and this is a crucial nuance to her, the research indicates that these effects are largely mediated by competence and value beliefs.
What does mediated mean here?
It means it's not simply the grade itself, the objective past performance, that directly causes the emotion. It's more about how that grade shapes a student's beliefs about their ability, wow, I guess I am good at this, and the inherent value of the subject. This is actually kind of interesting now that I'm getting it. It is these updated beliefs, the changes in perceived control and value that then directly shape their subsequent emotional experiences. So a good grade isn't just a number. It's feedback that can reinforce self-efficacy and boost intrinsic motivation. Or a bad grade can unfortunately lower them.
That's fascinating. It's not just the grade itself, but how the grade shapes your internal narrative and sense of self, which then drives the emotion. Okay, moving on to cognitive ability, or abstract reasoning ability, ARA, and its link to emotions. This is often seen as a fixed trait, like IQ, so how does it interact with our emotional world during learning?
Right. ARA is a measure of cognitive horsepower, essentially, and it does relate to emotions during tasks like tests. Students with high ARA generally experience more enjoyment and less anger and anxiety during tests.
Why is that? Just because it's easier for them?
Likely, yes. They're
Yeah.
better equipped to handle the cognitive load. They probably succeed more often. And so the experience is less frustrating and more rewarding, leading to positive emotions. Conversely, students with lower ARA consistently report more anger and anxiety and less enjoyment, likely due to increased struggle, frustration, and perhaps negative outcomes.
Okay, that fits. But then there's boredom's unique pattern again.
Yes, exactly. As we mentioned, students in the intermediate ARA group often show the highest levels of boredom. This powerfully highlights that boredom is not solely a low-ability emotion. Its causes vary across ability levels, stemming from a lack of challenge for higher ability students versus overwhelming difficulty for lower ability students. It really emphasizes the need for differentiated instruction that matches the task to the student's ability level.
Right, the Goldilocks principle, not too hard, not too easy.
Pretty much. And speaking of ability, here's a truly significant finding about long-term growth that might surprise many of us. This comes from a really important longitudinal study. While intelligence, or ARA, is indeed a strong predictor of a student's initial academic achievement level, it gets you out of the gate quickly, maybe determines your starting point.
Huh?
It surprisingly does not predict their long-term growth rate in achievement over years.
Wait, really? So being smarter doesn't mean you learn more over time?
Not necessarily, according to this research. Instead, motivational factors like perceived control, I can influence my learning, and intrinsic motivation, I find this interesting, coupled with the consistent use of deep learning strategies, like trying to truly understand, not just memorize, are the key predictors of sustained academic growth over time.
Wow. That fundamentally changes how we should think about fostering long-term success. It's not just about how smart you start.
But how motivated and strategic you are in your learning journey, how much effort you put in driven by positive emotions and beliefs, and how effectively you learn.
That's incredibly hopeful, actually.
Mm.
Okay, let's also briefly address gender patterns again in mathematics-related emotions. We've touched on this, but let's summarize.
Sure. As we've noted, girls, compared to boys, consistently display what researchers call a debilitating pattern in some contexts regarding mathematics-related emotions and the underlying competence and value beliefs. This often include higher reported anxiety and hopelessness, and lower enjoyment and pride in math, and this difference can be evident as early as age 11. It's a concerning and persistent trend that needs attention.
Definitely. But you also mentioned something about the underlying mechanisms.
Yes, and here's a crucial distinction. Despite these observed differences in how boys and girls might feel about math on average, the research supports a universal nature for the cognitive antecedents of achievement emotions across genders. This means the mechanisms by which beliefs about control and value lead to those emotions are fundamentally similar for both boys and girls. The input might differ, girls reporting lower competence beliefs, but the processing how those beliefs translate into feelings seems to work the same way.
So the emotional operating system is the same, even if the inputs or outputs differ sometimes.
That's a good analogy. It suggests that interventions aiming to change emotions by targeting control and value beliefs don't necessarily need to be radically different for boys and girls. They can focus on these universal drivers for everyone.
That's a crucial distinction for designing effective interventions. Okay, so we've looked inside the learner. Now let's zoom out a bit and explore part 3.2. The external drivers, the powerful influences of the learning environment itself. We'll start with the profound impact of teacher influence.
Right, the classroom context. And teachers truly are, or can be, the emotional architects of the classroom. Studies consistently show that teachers who provide positive reinforcement for achievement,
Praising, effort, and success.
yes, and offer high-quality, clear instruction and give feedback that is truly contingent on student performance, meaning it's specific, timely, and helpful. These teachers correlate positively with student enjoyment and pride. Their actions also correlate negatively with student anxiety, anger, and boredom. Think of a teacher who makes you feel seen, supported, and challenged in a positive way. That has a huge emotional impact.
Absolutely. And the opposite is also true.
Unfortunately, yes, high perceived achievement pressure from the teacher. The constant push for grades over understanding, maybe making comparisons between students, can regrettably lead to increased negative emotions and a reduction in those vital positive ones like enjoyment and curiosity.
So finding that balance is key. And you mentioned earlier there are different types of teacher enthusiasm.
Yes, this is fascinating research because it breaks down enthusiasm into its component parts, showing it's not just one thing. First, there's teaching enthusiasm, which is activity-related. This reflects a teacher's genuine enjoyment and passion for the act of teaching itself. You see it in their delivery, their engagement with the class, their energy. Imagine a teacher whose eyes light up when explaining something, who clearly loves the process of guiding learning.
You can feel that energy.
You really can. This dimension is strongly linked to the teacher's own occupational well-being. Happy teachers are often more enthusiastic teachers, and it's notably highest in classes, where students also report high enjoyment of mathematics and low levels of disruption. It seems to be contagious, maybe in both directions.
Okay, so enthusiasm for the act of teaching. What's the other type?
The other is subject enthusiasm, which is topic-related. This refers to a teacher's deep interest and passion for the subject matter they teach. Think of a history teacher who is completely captivated by the historical period they're discussing, or a science teacher who geeks out over a new discovery.
Their love for the content itself.
Exactly. While it moderately correlates with a teacher's general well-being, it appears to be somewhat independent of the specific characteristics or behaviors of the classes they teach. Some teachers just love their subject, regardless of the class. These two types, teaching enthusiasm and subject enthusiasm, are distinct but moderately connected. And the findings strongly suggest that teacher enthusiasm, both kinds, profoundly influences student emotions and likely vice versa, creating a dynamic emotional ecosystem in the classroom. When teachers love what they do, it often rubs off on their students.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, here's that truly counterintuitive finding you mentioned about teacher punishment and boredom. Can you unpack that again? It seemed contradictory.
It does seem contradictory at first glance. Okay, so at an individual student level, more frequent perceived teacher punishment actually correlates with higher reported boredom. So if you personally feel constantly disciplined or criticized, you might feel more bored, maybe disengaged as a result.
Okay, that part makes sense. Getting yelled at isn't engaging.
Right. However, here's the twist. At the class level, when averaging student perceptions across an entire class, a higher overall perception of teacher punishment in the classroom was associated with less overall boredom reported by the class as a whole.
Wait, so a stricter class is less bored overall. How could that be?
It's puzzling, right? The researchers proposed this intriguing compositional effect. One interpretation might be that a consistently punitive or demanding teacher, while potentially negative for individuals, might signal, at a collective level, a high degree of teacher engagement and involvement with the material in classroom management. This high level of structure or perceived seriousness might implicitly reduce overall class boredom, perhaps by keeping everyone more on task, even if it's through a demanding or less pleasant environment.
So maybe less time for minds to wander, even if the feeling isn't positive.
Possibly. It's complex and highlights that classroom management strategies have nuanced effects that can differ at the individual versus the group level. It definitely warrants careful reflection from teachers.
Absolutely. Okay, next, let's consider peer influence, the social echo chamber of emotions within the classroom. How powerful is that?
It's incredibly powerful. When students perceive that their peers hold high esteem for a subject like mathematics, meaning it's considered cool or valued by their friends to be good at math or to try hard.
The social norm.
Exactly, the social norm. This strongly predicts their own enjoyment and negatively predicts their anxiety, anger, and boredom in that subject. For enjoyment and anxiety, some studies found these class-level peer effects were even stronger than individual effects, highlighting the immense power of collective perception. A positive peer culture can amplify positive emotions and mitigate negative ones significantly.
So who you learn with matters a lot emotionally.
It really does. But peer influence isn't always straightforwardly positive. Perceived competition among classmates can have a mixed impact. Surprisingly, it predicted both enjoyment, perhaps of some highly competitive students who thrive on that challenge and want to win.
Right, some people love competition.
And it also predicted increased anxiety and anger for others, perhaps those who feel overwhelmed by the competition or feel it's unfair. This shows competition can be a double-edged sword in the classroom.
Needs careful management then.
Definitely. And in collaborative learning settings like group work, social emotions become really important. This includes feelings towards individual peers. Do I like working with Sarah? The group as a whole, is our group functioning well? Or even other groups, are we better than them? These social feelings play a significant role in students' motivation and willingness to engage in the learning task. If you don't feel good about your group mates, your motivation to learn with them might plummet, regardless of how interesting the task itself is.
Yeah, group work dynamics can be tricky. Okay, finally, within external drivers, let's talk about teaching methods and how they can be structured for both success and positive affect.
Right, how the learning is actually organized. Findings from a major German research project called part of Pekrun's broader research program are highly illuminating here. This project compared different ways of teaching mathematical modeling. It found that student-centered operative strategic teaching, where students had more autonomy and focused on strategies, significantly outperformed teacher-centered directive teaching, more like traditional lecturing in developing complex modeling competency.
Yes, for complex skills, and importantly for our discussion, the student-centered approach also strongly improves students' self-regulation skills and was positively linked to increased enjoyment, higher effort, and more frequent use of effective learning strategies. It suggests giving students more agency often leads to better cognitive and emotional outcomes.
That aligns with the control value theory, doesn't it? More control leads to better feelings. Precisely. The research also highlights more broadly that learning environments that actively facilitate cooperative exchange students working together, sharing ideas, and offer opportunities for students to set individual goals generally create more favorable conditions for positive emotional development. Think of well-structured group projects where everyone contributes meaningfully, or individual assignments where students can choose their own path to mastery within certain parameters. These environments naturally encourage greater engagement and ownership, fostering that crucial sense of control and value.
It empowers the learner.
Exactly. It's also worth noting how this specific type of mathematical problem can influence student effect. Things like complex modeling problems with real-world connections versus more abstract, purely mathematical problems, or simple word problems. While findings are mixed on whether students automatically show more interest in real-world problems compared to others, sometimes they find them harder or messier.
Right. The real world isn't always neat.
True. But a well-designed teaching unit using modeling problems can lead to positive changes in effect across all problem types presented in that unit. This suggests the instructional design around the problems, how they are introduced, framed, and supported by the teacher is key, rather than just the problem type itself in isolation. It's about how you teach with these problems, not just what problems you assign.
Okay, that makes sense. The context matters. So we've covered the theory, the specific emotions, the internal drivers, the external drivers. Now, what does this all mean for you, the listener, whether you're teaching or learning? Let's transition into part 4, empowering learning, practical steps for teachers and learners. We'll start with actionable advice for teachers. How can they cultivate a positive emotional climate that truly supercharges learning?
Okay, practical takeaways for teachers. First, and this is fundamental, teachers should actively design for emotional engagement. Move beyond merely conveying information to actively crafting learning activities that are inherently enjoyable and interesting rather than just tolerable or, worse, boring.
So think about the feeling of the activity, not just the content.
Exactly. This means reducing anxiety-inducing rote work, where students just mechanically repeat facts without understanding, and instead increasing engaging, relevant, and intrinsically motivating tasks. Remember, enjoyable activities don't just feel good. They directly motivate effort and can even improve long-term memory through their impact on brain chemistry, like that dopamine link we talked about. Think about incorporating puzzles, debates, real-world challenges, creative projects, student choice.
Things that pull students in. Okay, second point.
Second, teachers need to deliberately foster strong control and value beliefs by directly applying Pekrun's control value theory in their classroom.
Make the theory practical.
To build competence, control, provide clear learning objectives so students know exactly what success looks like and scaffold tasks appropriately. Break complex tasks down into manageable steps to ensure students feel a sense of mastery and control as they progress. Don't just throw them in the deep end. Offer specific, constructive feedback that highlights their progress and attributes success to their effort and the strategies they used. You really improved because you tried that new outlining method. Rather than just innate ability, you're smart. This empowers them, shows them success is earned.
Okay, that's the control part. What about value?
And crucially, highlight value. Explicitly connect the learning material to students' lives, their interests, and real-world applications. Why should they care? Help them answer that. Emphasize the intrinsic joy of discovery. Isn't it cool how this works? The utility of the knowledge for their future. This skill will help you in college jobs. And the importance of the skills being developed. Using those real-world modeling problems, even if challenging, can be part of a carefully designed unit that boosts overall positive effect if you help students see the relevance.
Got it. Make it meaningful. Third,
teachers should intentionally express and leverage their enthusiasm. Remember those two types.
teaching enthusiasm and subject enthusiasm.
Right. Cultivate and openly express both your genuine passion for the topic itself and your enjoyment of the act of teaching. This isn't about putting on a fake performance. Students see through that. It's about letting your authentic energy show. Your teaching enthusiasm, your enjoyment of the process is particularly powerful. Studies consistently show it can directly lead to increased student enjoyment of the subject and even a reduction in classroom disruptions. Your energy, your genuine excitement is truly contagious and sets a positive tone.
Be the change you want to see in the classroom's energy. Okay, fourth, and this might feel counterintuitive again. Embrace and strategically manage student confusion.
Yes, don't fear the confusion. View it not as a teaching failure, but as a powerful signal for deeper learning and a catalyst for cognitive restructuring. It means their brain is working hard, bumping up against the limits of its understanding.
So don't rush to eliminate it.
Not necessarily. Intentionally introduce well-structured, discrepant events or contradictions into your lessons sometimes. Present scenarios that challenge existing ideas in a manageable way. But crucially, and this is key, follow these moments of potential confusion with supportive interventions and clear explanations to help students resolve their cognitive conflict. Guide them through it. This process, confusion followed by resolution when effectively managed, has been causally linked to significant learning gains and improved knowledge transfer. Don't smooth over confusion. Lean into it productively and guide them through to clarity.
That requires careful planning. Okay, number 5.
Fifth, implement student-centered and collaborative learning methodologies. Shift away from solely directive teaching, where the teacher does all the talking and controlling, towards approaches that actively promote student independence, choice, and self-regulation. That DSEM project provided strong evidence. Student-centered, operative strategic methods significantly improve complex problem-solving abilities, boost student self-regulation, increase enjoyment, effort, and the use of effective learning strategies. Let them drive more.
And collaboration.
Absolutely. Design and facilitate cooperative group work, where students can exchange ideas, teach each other, and collectively solve problems. These environments foster positive emotional development and intrinsic motivation. Because they tap into social needs and shared goals, plus students often learn concepts deeply when they have to explain them to others.
And when they're working more independently or in groups, how should the teacher support them?
Provide targeted, strategy-oriented interventions. This is crucial. For example, rather than giving them the answer when they get stuck, prompt them to use a strategy. Have you tried sketching the problem? Could you underline the key information? What's the actual question being asked here?
Right.
Guide them without removing their autonomy or doing the thinking for them. This is about teaching them how to think, not just what to think. And be mindful of superficial strategies, like telling them to just look for key words in a math problem, which often prevents genuine understanding. You want them to grapple with the deeper meaning.
Foster independence, not dependence. Okay, 6th point for teachers.
Sixth, teachers must carefully manage classroom dynamics and peer influence. Remember how powerful peers are.
Yeah, the social echo chamber.
Right. So actively promote a classroom culture where academic effort, competence, and success are valued and supported by peers. Make it cool to learn. When students perceive that their classmates hold high esteem for learning, it significantly boosts their own enjoyment and reduces negative emotions like anxiety. Also, be aware of how excessive perceived competition among students and perceived teacher punishment can increase student anxiety and anger. Revisit that finding about punishment and boredom. It's complex. While individual students may feel more bored with perceived punishment, at a class level, consistent teacher engagement, even if demanding, might implicitly reduce overall class boredom. It's a nuanced balance, requiring careful reflection on your teaching style and its overall impact.
It's about finding that sweet spot. Okay, finally, for teachers.
Finally, it's essential to differentiate instruction based on ability and emotional needs. Remember the boredom paradox.
Right, boredom can hit high flyers and strugglers for different reasons.
Exactly. Recognize that boredom can stem from either a lack of challenge for high-ability students or overwhelming difficulty for low-ability students. So, provide appropriate levels of challenge and support to match students' abstract reasoning abilities and where they are in their learning. This might mean offering extension activities or more complex problems for advanced learners, and more scaffolded support, explicit strategy instruction, or alternative approaches for those who are struggling. Tailoring the experience to the individual's needs is key to keeping all students engaged and emotionally invested.
Meeting students where they are. Great practical advice for teachers. Now let's shift our focus to actionable advice for learners. How can we, as individuals navigating our own education or professional development, master our own emotional landscape to make learning more effective and fulfilling?
Okay, takeaways for learners. First, and this mirrors the advice for teachers, actively cultivate your sense of control and value. Take ownership. Understand that your belief in your competence directly impacts your emotions and your willingness to invest effort. Focus on what you can control your effort, the strategies you choose to use, how you manage your time, your persistence when things get tough. You might not control the difficulty of the material or the exam format, but you control your approach to it.
Focus on your agency.
Exactly. And, just as important, find your why. Actively seek out the relevance and intrinsic value in what you're learning. Ask yourself, how does this connect to my goals, my interests, the real world? When you can connect the material to your personal life, your curiosity, your future aspirations, you'll uncover deeper meaning. When you find personal meaning and inherent interest in the material itself, beyond just the grades or external rewards, you'll naturally experience more enjoyment and pride. It makes learning more sustainable and genuinely satisfying. It transforms a chore into a choice.
Find the personal connection. Okay, second tip for learners.
Second, embrace confusion as a powerful learning signal. This is huge. When you feel confused, and you will, if you're tackling challenging material, don't immediately shy away from it or let it spiral into frustration and giving up.
Panic.
Right. Instead, consciously try to recognize it as a valuable signal, a sign that your brain is actively working, grappling with new, complex ideas, and that you are potentially on the verge of a breakthrough, a deeper level of understanding. See confusion as an invitation to act. Ask questions of yourself, peers, instructors. Explore different perspectives. Revisit the foundational material, or seek clarification. Engaging with confusion productively, rather than avoiding it, is where significant conceptual change and true lasting learning often happen. It's a sign you're stretching your mind.
Reframe confusion as a sign of progress, not failure. Third,
Develop and practice self-regulation and deep learning strategies. Take ownership of your learning journey actively. Your ability to self-regulate, setting clear goals for yourself, managing your time effectively, monitoring your own understanding. Do I really get this, or did I just read it? And proactively selecting effective study strategies is strongly linked to positive emotions like enjoyment and pride, and ultimately to better performance.
be your own learning manager.
Yes. And importantly, go beyond surface learning. Don't just aim to memorize facts for the test. Prioritize deep learning strategies, things like semantic elaboration, where you actively connect new information to what you already know, making analogies, explaining it in your own words. Or critical analysis, where you question assumptions, evaluate evidence, and consider different viewpoints. These deeper strategies, coupled with that intrinsic motivation we talk about, are the strongest predictors of your long-term academic growth, even more so than your baseline intelligence, according to that key study. While rote memorization might yield short-term gains, deep strategies build lasting, transferable knowledge that truly expands your mind and capabilities.
Invest in understanding, not just memorizing. Okay, and the final piece of advice for learners.
Finally, practice emotional self-awareness and adaptation. Pay attention to your feelings. Tune in to how you feel during different learning activities. Are you experiencing that knot of anxiety before a test, that dull ache of boredom during a long lecture, or perhaps a surge of joy or pride when you finally solve a challenging problem or contribute meaningfully in a discussion? Your emotions provide valuable real-time feedback on your engagement, your understanding, and maybe the fit between you and the task.
Listen to your feelings.
Yes, listen and then respond constructively. If you're bored because a task is too easy, can you seek more challenge or apply the knowledge in a new, creative way? If it's too difficult and causing anxiety, can you break it down into smaller pieces, ask for specific help, or find alternative resources like videos or different explanations? If you're anxious, can you focus on the process and your controllable efforts, like your preparation and strategies, rather than solely fixating on the uncontrollable outcome? Recognizing that emotions, like boredom, can manifest differently based on your perceived ability or the situation allows for more tailored, effective responses. Become a smarter navigator of your own emotional landscape.
That's incredibly empowering. Okay, let's wrap up. Today, we've taken a really deep dive into Reinhard Pekrun's profound work, uncovering how his control value theory illuminates the intricate dance between our beliefs, our learning environment, and crucially, our emotions.
It's a powerful framework.
It really is. We've seen that emotions are not just incidental feelings, not just fluff, but central forces influencing our effort, our attention, our memory, and even the educational and career choices we make throughout our lives.
Huge downstream effects.
Absolutely. From the surprising nuances of 5 different types of boredom to the potentially transformative benefits of constructive confusion and the crucial, powerful role of both teacher influence and peer dynamics, the emotional landscape of learning is far richer and more impactful than many of us probably realize.
The research unequivocally shows that by understanding and actively addressing the emotional side of learning, both as educators shaping environments and as learners navigating our own paths, we unlock profound and lasting potential that goes far beyond just acquiring facts or passing tests.
It helps us thrive.
Exactly. We empower ourselves and others to truly thrive in the learning process.
So, as you, our listener, continue your own learning journey or perhaps shape the learning experiences of others, consider this final provocative thought. How can you intentionally design or approach situations to not just impart knowledge, but to actively cultivate more positive, activating emotions like enjoyment, curiosity, and that productive confusion we talked about?
And conversely, how can you minimize the debilitating anxiety or that soul-crushing apathetic disengagement?
What subtle yet powerful shifts can you make, maybe starting today, to empower yourself or others to not just acquire knowledge, but to truly thrive and find deep satisfaction, excitement, and maybe even purpose in the incredible lifelong process of learning?
The answer, as Pekrun's incredibly valuable work shows, lies within understanding and nurturing that invisible yet powerful engine of emotion.
A fantastic place to leave it. Thanks for that deep dive.
My pleasure. It's fascinating stuff.
Until next time on the Deep Dive.